www.offthecorner.net. You're watching the FACT Project, and FACT, of course, is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African-Centered Thought. The goal here on the FACT Project is to convey some facts and some information to members of our community. We have joining us today for the second time this month, our good brother, educator, author, activist, and creator of Harlem Liberation School, Brother Agyei Tyehimba. Peace, Brother Agyei. Thank you for joining us this morning, brother.
Peace and black power, my brother. Always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so how is everything at Harlem Liberation School before we get into the subject?
Everything is good, man. We're actually expanding it. We're going to bring it back hopefully soon to a brick and mortar situation.
Okay.
Like it started, and we're going to expand it to get into some advocacy and some activism.
Nice. Okay, so you have to keep me posted on that, because I would like to definitely come down there and be involved up close.
Definitely.
So, definitely keep me posted. And what are some of the activities apart from just teaching? Is there any other activities that you're gonna have?
Well, yeah. For one, definitely the foundation will be a 12-week and a revolving political education class and curriculum, community organizing class and curriculum, both about 12 weeks that will rotate throughout the year.
Okay.
As well as actually forming some committees and getting involved in some grassroots activism as well.
Okay. So today's topic is titled, "Is FBA an Internet Hoax?" We have Brother Quabana joining us all the way from Indiana. Peace, Brother Quabana. Thank you for joining us today, brother.
Oh, man, good to be with you two strong brothers this morning.
Yeah, appreciate it. So yeah, we're going to the topic, brother. Is FBA an internet hoax? Now, Brother Agyei, we'll start with you. What do you know about FBA, Foundational Black Americans? What do you understand about that movement?
Oh boy, there's a lot to this one. Well, I know that they that it is a designation, but it's also an organization that kind of comes out of the American descendants of slaves. Apparently, the leaders, there was some division or some conflict, and certain people broke off and started their own thing called FBA, Foundational Black Americans. And I know that they tend to identify themselves in a way that, at least in my humble opinion, is quite narrow. So Black identity becomes simply those who can trace a lineage to being descendants of our enslaved ancestors, and that so that's the core of what I know about it. And I have other things to say, but I think I'll stop there for now.
Yeah. We'll let you get to those other things. Brother Quabana, you had wanted to share some things about the origin of FBA. What can you tell us about that?
I just know that some leadership with ADOS were having a conference. I think it was in Louisville, one of their first big conferences, and leading up to that, one of the people who had really got in tight with ADOS or was not given the recognition I don't think he thought he deserved for being a key player in that xenophobic madness called DOS. And I guess he got wasn't happy, so he tied into this fundamental Black, what is it? FBA, Fundamental Black American Madness. And there's so many people who went on in there with him, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of sad, really. I don't know. I struggle with that. Yeah.
I'm sharing my screen because I'm sharing the definition of the word hoax. This is something I learned from the great Professor James Small, as well as the great Neely Fuller Jr. I always define words so people are very clear on what you're saying. So hoax is defined as to trick into believing or accepting as genuine something false and often preposterous. It's hard to read that without laughing because, Black people are saying that they're not African. And I say here all the time, If you're black and you're saying you're not African, and that's like saying the sun is not hot. You may as well believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy if you're going to believe that. But hoax is also defined as an act intended to trick or dupe something accepted or established by fraud or fabrication. Now, I think it's interesting that Dr. Claude Anderson is really the person that originated the term foundational Black American. I don't know if a lot of people even know that. You know, people that are following this, I'm not even sure if they even know that. But Dr. Claude Anderson, who is an economist, who is brilliant, not saying anything against him, but when it comes to Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism, Dr. Claude Anderson is definitely not the go-to person. So I say, as a person who is Pan-African and Black nationalist, we don't need to divide the group or divide ourselves based on what we call ourselves. And I think if we study history, we need to study history, first of all, to know the science. But it's sad to say that Black people seem to be the only race of people that are trying to dismiss their origin. Now, Brother Agyei, you worked in the public school with, students in the classroom. Did you notice this identity confusion in the classroom with the children?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's to be expected when those children are the offspring of generations of Black people been disconnected culturally, isolated from who they are, conditioned to believe Africa is ugly and violent, and that Black people are somehow retarded somehow in various ways. That's to be expected. Actually, if people want to get some good reading on that, there's a book Donald Bogle wrote probably in the 80s or 90s called Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks. It's a long title. Tom, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks talks about, from the United States point of view, how Black people were the victims of an anti-Black propaganda campaign to justify racism. And then, of course, that happened in the African context. If people want to know more about that, Chancellor Williams and Destruction of Black Civilization breaks down how European colonial powers very deliberately maligned Africa and made the world, and particularly our people, to think that we couldn't do anything for ourselves. We were bumbling idiots. We were hyper-violent, hypersexual. And the list goes on and on. Didn't contribute anything to humanity. So, yeah, it would make sense that the descendant, by the time I'm a teacher in 1997 in New York City, that those students who are Black would be completely oblivious to who they are and where they come from.
Okay, Brother Kwabena, same question. You work with young people from time to time. Do you notice this identity confusion among the children?
Yeah, definitely. I was teaching years ago, substitute teaching in Gary in several classes, and I remember being around a bunch of sisters, 10th grade, 11th grade, and Mr. Pratt, how come they have hair like that? They have that good hair, and we have hair like this. Like, wow. So, of course, we explained to them, your hair is strong and kinky and made like the creator needed it to be made where you live in your climate. Your hair is beautiful. Your hair is strong. When it gets wet, it curls up and resists. When their hair gets wet, it lays down, and so that didn't happen just at one school. It happened at another school that same year. Another group of female sisters in the class. They asked the same question. I'm like, wow. So it really hit me right there when I had the question about those two groups of people. And I'd already known, we studied Malcolm, way back 60-some years ago. And we said, who taught you to hate yourself? And it's still ingrained in us. And so it was even worse now because, again, y'all know every time we talk, we go talk about this music. We all love and get into this music. But the music tells us to hate ourselves, hate our people, hate our women. Hey, it's like, and this is the same thing. So I understand why a lot of us are confused in this matter. Now, leadership in this FBA piece is something I don't understand, because when you produce a documentary that everybody loves and you got people like Dr. Smalls and Dr. Ranoka Rashidi in it, I mean, like, they're Pan-Africanists. So that's really not, he should know better. They should know better. Now these, the layman on the street or whatever, the lumpen proletarian, we should know better too. But you've been with the masters. You've been with these cats.
Exactly. So somebody said recently that black people seem to be the only race of people that think that their identity expires. Like somebody could send you a link in an email and it times out, like you got to use it before it times out. Mm-hmm. Black people are the only race of people that think that their identity times out, and over time they have to become something else. So I even heard one of the FBA or ADOS people say, well, how long do you have to be in America before you start identifying as American and you're no longer African? Now, yeah, it's hard to say that without laughing. Chinese people could be in America for 20 generations. The end of 20 generations, they're still Chinese. East Indian people could come here and be here for 10 generations. At the end of 10 generations, they still East Indian. I knew a East Indian. Well, he was from Trinidad. Somebody I work with at the job, and we had these conversations, and he told me that his family had been in Trinidad for at least 3 or 4 generations. So I asked him, "Do you identify as Trinidadian or East Indian?" He said East Indian. His family had been in Trinidad for all that time. So it's my opinion to say that a lot of the identity confusion and what people are calling themselves stems from the information that they're getting. So your consciousness is impacted by the information that you take in. And so I think that this is the reason why black people might think that their identity times out or expires. Now, Brother Agyei, do you agree with that? Do you think the information, like the Brother Quabana mentioned, the music, the media, the public school, religious institutions that show you white God and white Jesus, are those things impacting our consciousness and making us not want to be African and try to disconnect from an African identity?
Yes, sir. Going back to what I said, my original comments is that there was an anti-African campaign and propaganda that said that we were savage, hyper-violent, hypersexual. We hadn't produced anything. We couldn't solve our own problems, that type of thing. And then I talked about the same conspiracy now against so-called Black Americans or new Africans here in the States or throughout the diaspora, done through movies and cartoons, nursery rhymes like 10 Little Niggas that became 10 Little Indians, and all types of stuff, right? So yeah, so that is part of a kind of a psychological warfare to condition for 2 reasons. One, to justify to the world and to themselves as the oppressors that they have the right, whether it be from some deity or the universe, to subjugate another group of people. But secondly, and more for our interests, was to condition us to believe that we deserve to be raped, pillaged, and plundered, misrepresented, and mischaracterized. That was our lot in life, and that we had to accept it to prevent us from organizing, strategizing, and resisting against those who are perpetuating that to us. So absolutely, it's come our so-called shame, but it's not just shame. It's a rejection of Africa. It's being ashamed of Africa. It's a denial that we're African. It's escapism. All of those are expressions of the anti-African, anti-Black conditioning we've received for hundreds of years. So hip hop plays a part, but just to be clear to our viewers, before there was any hip hop in existence, before Kool Herc and Kaz and the Treacherous D and everybody, way before their great grandfathers and mothers were born, there were white people from Europe that were planting seeds that we are nothing, have nothing, and can be nothing, right? And so when you see hip hop, and Brother Kwabena is absolutely right, that the hip hop has played a role, understand that there was always been a group of Black people who were resisting white supremacy, and there was always a group that were trying to make peace with white folk and trying to assimilate and integrate. And one of the ways you did that, some people felt, was to de-Africanize themselves, to not talk about Africa, to not dress in any way that reflects African culture, to not use any type of African expressions, to do everything we could to kind of push Africa away. So even that is an expression of, I don't want to, if I'm African or seen as too Black, I don't get the jobs, I don't get the respect, I don't get the promotions. There's a whole 60 Minutes episode about, they did a study of people with resumes, and the more Black or African one's name sounded, the least likely they were to get a call back. the more Euro their name sounded, they were more likely to get a call back. So all of this comes from centuries ago. This is not new. This is what we're seeing now are just new expressions of the same old song.
Brother Kwabena, I'm gonna come to you with the same question. I want to add on to what Brother Agyei is saying. We are people of African heritage, and the only difference between people who identify as FBA and someone that's Haitian or Jamaican or from Barbados, the only difference between us is a boat stop. So the people that identify as FBA could have been Haitian or Jamaican themselves, and because the boat dropped off their ancestors in a different location. So the great Dr. John Henry Clarke always said that we spend too much time focusing on where the boat dropped us off and not enough time focusing on where the boat picked us up from. And so in all actuality, there is no genetic DNA test that's going to tell a person that they're FBA. That's a completely fictional designation. No such thing. Now, Brother Kwabena, you work a lot with the music and the impact that it has on us psychologically. You understand the music to be psychological warfare. What kind of an impact does the music have on the minds of people who are trying to disavow or disassociate any connection with an African identity?
I'll think about Tyrese Halliburton last night when he got injured, and I think about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, when he won, and I think about their mates, and I think about when I was working at Purdue. One of the guys that worked for me did our environmental work, and he'd have to go down to Indianapolis every year to get updates on OSHA and what's going on in OSHA. This happened to be the same time as the NFL Combine was taking place. So he comes back one year and says, "Man, you wouldn't believe all those women who were down there at that Combine. Man, there were a bunch of young girls down there." So I go away. He comes back the next day and says it again. "Do you know that all those women were white?"
Wow.
And I think about that, and I look at that, and I'm like, I look at the marriage rate for Black women. Not that we have to all be into this, this U.S. definition of marriage and families and all that, but still, the reality, we know where we live, and we know what it is. And I ask myself, damn near 50% of Black women have never been married. 50% of Black women are married age. And my question is, who's gonna marry them? If every time I tune into the radio station, I'm hearing ain't nothing to cut that B off, or them H's ain't loyal, or I will never wife her, only one nighter, the woman full of lies, I just F them and pass them to my guys. And this stuff is getting rewarded. The artists are getting, who gonna marry her? And then the sisters come out. It was about 8-9 years ago when Cardi B Gone, your homegirl, came out, and the floodgates opened up after that. It was Megan, it was the City Girls, it was Lock. It was just so many to come out, and pretty much all of them who they promote and push disrespect themselves. They fine, they're beautiful sisters. We get with them, but who gonna bring that home to their mama?
Right.
So, and I think about, I listened to Brother Agyei's show last night. I wanted to do some stuff on FBA, but while I was working, I listened to his interview with the good sister, the educator, the doctor. She talked about growing up, how one of the things they would do when they go out in the Bronx, the role that music played back then, how music brought us together, how beautiful the music was. And also she did a doctor, her name escapes me right now, but she talked about the book that she wrote on the West Indian sisters who would usually typically be in the school doing their thing, but now they ain't there fighting. And it ain't just there, it's everywhere. When I was substituting at the same time, substituting I was talking about earlier, and Gary's a rough place, I ain't gonna lie. Fights in the schools all the time. Every time the guys had one fight, the girls had 5.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
And so this is self-hate. This is the same self-hate you guys has been talked about way before hip-hop, but this slop hop music is just made it go crazy right now. Even if we look at the murder rates and stuff, what have you. So it plays a role in hating ourselves. And again, I understand, because I wouldn't want to be associated if I wasn't conscious and wasn't aware of who I am, and did study Runoko and John Henry Clarke and Malcolm and Kwame, and I probably would be a struggle for me too. So that's why it's so important that we have programs like what you're doing here in Harlem Liberation School, and share that and have sessions on all these things, because while we're doing this, the enemy's working 24/7, 365 to get us and to separate us. And FBA, DOS. I mean, they fell for this hook, line, and sinker, or they, like you said, they're doing it on purpose. I don't know. It's crazy to me.
Now, I would say in the system of structural racism, which is based on the myth of white supremacy, your contrived FBA identity doesn't even matter because they see us as a bunch of N-words anyway. So I don't see why you would make the distinction. But the question says, if the narrative is divisive and divides the race, who benefits from that, Brother Agyei?
Well, if you took one pencil and I told you break it, that'd be very easy. If I gave you 10 pencils, bundled up, rubber band them together, it'd be more difficult. But if I gave you 100 pencils, banded together, it'd be impossible to break it with your hands at least. And so it's basically saying when our people are divided, we're like that one pencil. We're easy to break. But when we come together and band together and work together around common causes against common enemies for common issues, then we're like that 100 pencils. And this is why racist institutions work diligently, deliberately, intentionally. Nothing we see, for those watching, is haphazard. Nothing is incidental or accidental. When you see that kids used to be able to look at an analog clock and tell the time and now they can't, they don't know how to write their name in script, they're not able to read well because they don't know phonics, that is not accidental. This is all part of a design, right? These institutions work day and night to keep us divided. Why? Because Black unity leads to Black resistance, leads to Black economic empowerment and independence, and leads ultimately to Black political empowerment and self-determination and nationhood. So they divide us for those to make sure that we never defeat them and create the type of nationhood that we need.
Yeah, and when you see something hit the news, or in some cases even the internet, whatever you're seeing is already processed propaganda. And so this is all part of the psychological warfare. And I say there's two things that Black people don't understand. Black people don't understand the seriousness of the moment we're in right now, and Black people don't understand propaganda. And propaganda works, which is why they use it against us. Now, I want to share my screen because I want to come to this video because a lot of people that identify as FBA may not even know that a lot of this FBA rhetoric is actually coming from Dr. Claude Anderson. They took the term FBA and they ran with it.
You said something earlier in an answer where you said that you talk about native Blacks. And so that clearly sounds as
native Blacks. There's no such thing as native Blacks. Again, in all of anthropology, you're not finding these terms. These are things that people are making up. Native Blacks is not a thing.
You are delineating native Blacks versus someone that comes here from Bermuda or Jamaica or wherever they may they may come from that is Black.
That's right.
And the purpose of that is what? Because you on the surface, it would be like, hey, everybody here that's Black gets treated a certain way. Why are you making that delineation?
That is an excellent point. You know why? Because you see, those people coming in from Jamaica or coming in from Africa, they have not been treated like Black folk in this country.
Okay, now stop right there. Black people from Jamaica and Africa have not been treated like Black people in this country. Now, Brother Agyei, you're in New York. You remember Brother Amadou Diallo? He came to New York from Africa to try to create a better life for himself. And he was murdered in a racially bigoted police killing. He was from Africa. But Dr. Claude Anderson wants us to believe that other people can come here and they're not treated the way Black people in America are. Listen.
That's the first thing. And secondly, historically, they haven't had those historical experiences. They come in here voluntarily. When they come in here, they bring some cultural aspects from Africa.
Okay, stop right there. In anthropology is a term called Africanisms. Brother Agyei, you familiar with this? This is where Black people, no matter where we are in the world, we still exemplify some aspect of African culture. So he's saying all these other groups are bringing their culture, and Black people in America, I guess, have no culture. We already bring and exhibit African culture in some way. Listen,
they can go back anytime they want, but the Black people in this country have been exceptional people. Nobody's been mistreated, maltreated like them.
Nobody's been mistreated like black people. I think black people in the world have been mistreated. Now I'm gonna stop there. I want to keep going with that video, but Brother Kwabena, what are some of your thoughts as you're hearing this? He's saying that black people in America are the most mistreated, and nobody's. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, Dr. Claude Anderson has to read. He has to read Capitalism versus Slavery. He has to read the Black Jacobins. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's not good.
I mean, I thought about Diallo. I'm gonna do Diallo a little earlier when you were talking too about after what happened. I thought about that hard rap song too. That I can't think of the name of it. I listened 41 Shots. I think what may have been the name of it. Okay. That was done. Y'all should check that song out. That they did in response to the that vicious murder of Amadou Diallo. But just confusion, and that's why when Dr. Claude Anderson. All respect due, man, should stick to the economic piece, because I still struggle with some of his talk about the native people of this land and how he disrespects them.
Yeah.
So I mean, and again, even with just about all that, we all need to. What was that word? My father used to always talk about this. I'm not sure where he got it from. He said, acceptance or rejection without investigation can lead you to the bottom of the pit of ignorance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brother Agyei, same question. What are your thoughts as you're hearing this, saying that Black Americans are the most mistreated and nobody's been mistreated? How do you react to that?
I go back to what Brother Malcolm said about Black people who assume leadership. What Kwame Nkrumah said about Black people who assume leadership after an African nation has supposedly won its independence from the colonial power. And they look like you and talk like you and dress like you and come from your village, but they not working with you. They working for the enemy. Now, I am not going to stand here and say that I'm saying that about him. I don't know that to be true. But when I hear people that sound that are it's like they're like 60%. You listen to, oh yeah, you're cheering. That's right. 60%. Then they take that hard left turn.
Yes.
Like, whoa. So now my mind starts thinking, sometimes people aspire to leadership. They selling their books, they selling their courses, they getting trips around the world, they getting some attention from the ladies, whatever it is. And sometimes people forgot why they came. Some people started off with good intention and forgot why they came, or were bought off, or they're, as Quabana implied, they are experts over here and they try to be an expert over there and they're not.
Yeah.
Right. So just because you're a dope historian don't mean I'm gonna read your nutritional supplement book because you know nothing about it.
Right. So,
you feel me?
Yeah.
I got you. So let's continue with the video. It's not long. Just stay with me.
Black folk exception. They're the only people that came here out forcefully. One. Two, they're the only people that denied their humanity. Three, they were the only
Black people in America, the only people that have been denied their humanity. African people have been denied their humanity, period. Listen.
People denied a right to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Four, they were the only people denied the right to participate in government. Five, they were the only people denied the right to vote. Six, they were only people denied the right to have an education.
Now, if you came here from Jamaica or Cuba and you had Afro hair back in the 50s and 60s, you didn't have the right to vote. So Black Americans are the only people that didn't have the right to vote? That's not accurate. Listen.
Seven, they were the only people denied the right to have a business. Eight, they were the only people that participated in every war that this country has had since its founding, but whose mother country has never been against this country. All those immigrants come from countries where they fought America, and they came in. And the seven, that they are the oldest and most patriotic people in the country.
Now, stop right there. Why would you want to be the most patriotic people in the country to America, which is basically a criminal enterprise? It involved enslavement, it involved genocide, it involved land theft, but you want to identify as American and be patriotic. That's delusional. Listen.
Not the Confederates in the South. They're not the most patriotic people waving the Confederate flag. The most patriotic people in this country are Black people, Native Blacks, because you see
Native Blacks, no such thing.
99% of all those Blacks have been direct descendants of slaves. They've been here.
And here's the thing, if they're direct descendants of slaves, are they not people of African heritage? This makes no logical sense. Listen.
Before 99% of all the other people ever arrived in this country. They're special people. And because they're special people, they need to be recognized, appreciated, and reparated, for what they've done in this country and building this country. They're the ones that built the bridges, the roads, cut the timber and the trees, and cleared the land, raised the tobacco, cotton, indigo. They're the people that fought and raised in every war to protect this country. The people coming from Africa or coming from Jamaica didn't. They came here voluntarily.
He keeps going back to Jamaica for some reason.
And the most important point on this is if you lump them with black folk, then you give the dominant white society a justification to say we don't owe black folk anything.
Aren't we all fighting the same European powers? This is illogical.
Because you see, the blackness that's native, the blackness, black people's blackness is more than just color. It is their heritage. It's their history.
That is, listen, that makes no sense. Listen.
It's confusing. This is confusing.
Yeah, for real. Listen.
Conduct, and more importantly, it is their badge of honor, and it's what it symbolizes the indebtedness that this country has to them. This country does not have an indebtedness to people coming from Africa. They don't have an indebtedness to people coming in from the Bahamas. If you lump black folk in there, you deprive black folk of the benefit, the debt that's owed them. Don't do that.
Now, I'm going to stop it right there. I say if we divide the group, which is what Claude Anderson is proposing, that only benefits the system of structural racism, which is based on the myth of white supremacy. Now, what Claude Anderson just did in answering that question is what's called a Gish Gallop. Again, I like definitions, and I like to be able to show and prove when I talk. I don't just say stuff. I like to give proof.
What you call him, brother?
Gish Gallop.
Gish Gallop. Never heard that one.
Okay. That's good. This is why we're here. We're gonna learn. Now, where am I at here? Okay, here we go. So Gish Gallop is a rhetorical technique where someone overwhelms an opponent with a rapid fire of arguments. Notice when Claude Anderson talked, he was all over the place. Rapid fire of arguments, often including specious reasoning. Brother Agyei, you and I talked briefly about logical fallacies. We're going to come to specious reasoning. So a rhetorical technique where someone overwhelms an opponent with a rapid fire of arguments, often including specious reasoning, half-truths, or outright lies, making it difficult for the opponent to effectively respond or refute each point. So, Brother Kwabena, a Gish Gallop is when someone asks you a question, and instead of just answering the question, you go off into so many different directions that it's almost impossible to respond, because where do you begin? Now,
I think I did that a little while ago myself.
That's fine. That's okay. That's okay. But when it's some information that is completely false and misleading, that's when it becomes a problem. So now it talked about specious reasoning. Just stay with me, because I want to make sure that everybody is clear about the way the disinformation is actually conveyed and how people actually fall for it. Because it may sound good, you know, if you're weak-minded, that was a good rap there. That might have sounded good.
Specious is an adjective.
Hold on. Here we go. What is specious?
Specious is an adjective that describes something that appears to be true or valid, but is actually misleading or deceptive.
Appears to be true or valid, but is actually misleading or deceptive. That's what Claude Anderson just did. It is very misleading.
It is often used to refer to arguments or claims that seem convincing on the surface, but lack genuine merit or accuracy upon closer inspection.
That's it right there. Seem convincing on the surface, but lack genuine merit or accuracy. He said so many things that was inaccurate. It's not even funny. Upon closer inspection.
For example, a specious argument might be logically flawed yet superficially appealing, leading one to believe it is correct despite its inherent faults.
All right, I'm gonna stop right there. Anybody want to respond to that idea of a Gish Gallop or specious reasoning, which is a lot of what Claude Anderson used in that clip?
No, I can if I could real quick, brother. Yeah, there's a brother.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a brother here. We just had a really contentious piece in Gary where they're putting a big 270,000 square foot flex building where an old school was. And we have an issue with a whole bunch of abandoned schools. And one of the brothers in the community, one of the black men in the community who was supporting this madness, because you don't put these things in neighborhoods, you put them in industrial areas and outside. This is part of gentrification that's taking place here, false planned removal of the people. But that's just what he did. He kept spewing points and stuff just like that and talking and had us all confused. I was even confused. What? Okay, oh, that sounds good. The taxes, if you put an industrial site, you're gonna get 3 times more than if you put residential places there, which is one of the things we were pushing for, because it was already zoned residential. I know this is again out of the point a little bit, but that's part of our overall issues that we got to deal with. Because again, you're displacing Black people, you're just displacing Africans. Claude. But yeah, man, I don't know. That was really interesting, and I'm glad to get that different definition and those words from you, brother. That's good. Yeah. And brother Agyei, again, last night when Claude was spewing that on that video you shared, I thought about your interview last night again, which was a powerful interview. I'm not sure if he did it last night, but that's when I watched it. And the sister, one of the things she talked about, she knows more than he does. She said our history ain't starting at no slavery. And he just took it back to slavery. And I heard her say that.
Yeah, Miss he's talking about Dr. Cherie Warren. She's the bomb. See, we were so serious about what we're talking about right now, about the kids, that we left the school we were in and started our own middle school. 25 years now, over 2,000 students graduated.
Wow.
And that sister, she went to Howard with Ross Baraka when he was a lot more fiery, and some other people. She was running with Sister Soldier. She's a warrior, but you would never know that if you saw her. She doesn't necessarily she doesn't wear her politics, but she lives her politics. So yeah, she's the bomb.
Yeah. So now, Brother Agyei, I'm gonna come to you with the next question. Before I ask the question, I will start by saying that they're starting their. They use the word lineage, which is a buzzword. This is all messaging and language. For whatever reason, when people hear the word lineage, this is our lineage, a lot of people just kind of let it go and fall back because they almost don't even know how to respond to that. But you cannot begin your identity subsequent to your captivity and subjugation to another people, because then you're not really identifying as who you really are. So now, Brother Agyei, as an African-centered educator, why is it important to have an African-centered perspective?
That's a good question. Good question. Well, an African-centered perspective is going to ensure that Black people determine our own priorities, that we determine our own values, that we create our own political agendas, and that we admire and emulate our own heroes and sheroes, right? So when you have an African-centered perspective as an African or New African person, it means that it puts you on a path to liberation and self-determination. You can never truly be free or liberated or self-determined if everything your enemy believes you believe. Everything, all the words he defines, you take his definitions. All the aspirations he has, you have. And this is why Brother Malcolm ingeniously had it what Maulana Karenga calls an oppositional logic, which means that as an oppressed person, you should always be acting in direct opposition, thinking in direct opposition to your oppressors. When you start sounding like your oppressors, then we have a problem. And when you're African-centered, that should never happen.
Yeah, now we come from a different generation that came up in the 80s. And Brother Agyei, I know you were on the front line of this. I feel like a lot of these FBA people don't know the struggle of the 80s and the 90s. So, for example, the attack that Dr. Leonard Jeffries had to go through just to try to bring what they call at the time the curriculum of inclusion into the schools. The mayor of New York City chimed in on that. It got that far, right? And so I feel like a lot of these people who identify as FBA, they're going to be a lot younger than you and I. They may not know the history of some of the struggles that you had to have Black studies into the classroom. What can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced in the 80s just trying to have that curriculum of inclusion in the classroom?
Yes. Well, as an undergrad at Syracuse, I was the president of the Student African American Society, which is our Black student union. And we were militant and radical. And our constituents said this was the number one issue they wanted to fight, so that's what we did. And we came up with 13 demands that came from our professors, community leaders, and some of the graduate and undergraduate students. And for a whole year, academic year, we fought the battle with articles, petitions, meetings, things like that. And ultimately, we started taking over their buildings. And then we started holding them hostage in the buildings. Then we started disrupting their meetings and disrupting American history classes and stopping traffic in the city. So eventually, after they got really bad press and embarrassment around the nation, they consented to those 13 demands. So that was the first piece. And they also tried to kick us out of school, but that was unsuccessful. Now that's as a student, but once I became an actual school teacher in New York, coming back home, I continued that fight. I taught social studies and I infused it directly in my classroom. Now, not as a student, but as a teacher, I made sure that those lesson plans were infused with our history. And I have to give a shout out to a man who was then known by the name Booker T. Coleman, now known as Professor Kaba Kameni, who in 1997, when I first started teaching, held weekly classes in the Bronx, teaching social studies teachers like me how to take Africana studies and infuse it in the curriculum in a way where the principals couldn't say that you were teaching stuff that wasn't in the curriculum. And I went every week, man, for 1, 2, 3 years. And it soaked up what brother Kaba Committee had to say. And then he eventually came to work in the school we started. So then he became a co-worker. But so, yeah, that fight has been ongoing, man, as a student, and as a college student, and then as a teacher, to make sure that our students get it. And what it shows me is we got to fight. If you're in college, you don't have the power to teach it, but you can put pressure and demands, because you pay tuition, to make sure you're a stakeholder, to make sure that these universities are responsive in terms of providing our culture and our curriculums. And then if we need more people to become teachers, family, to get into schools, to start African-centered schools, sure. But you know what? 85% of our kids go to public schools. So we also need teachers to go to the public schools and teach our kids, so that they come wherever school they go to, they got Black people there who love them and fight for them, like Dr. Cherie Warren does every day. And whether they are in an African-centered school, no matter where they are, we should have Africans, New Africans teaching, shaping curriculum, after-school programs, and all that.
Okay, now I say that the narrative and the message coming from these groups, Black separatist groups like ADOS and FBA, etc., is basically white male patriarchy masquerading as Black consciousness. So, Brother Kwabena, how much of a part does the hidden hand play in some of these groups that are out here pushing the division, from your perspective?
I was social media friends with this woman, Carnell, who really pushed and started DOS at the time when she did that. And, you know, it was first about reparations, you know, it's DOS reparations. And I was descendants of slaves, you know, still struggling with a little bit, but still checking out what she was talking about and listening and following and commenting periodically. Then all of a sudden she said something negative about Pan-Africanism. And I was like, wow, where did this come from? Why is she dogging out Pan-Africanism? And we debated for a little bit, and I was like, you know, this is silly. This is ahistorical. You expect me to believe you instead of, or go with you instead of Du Bois, Garvey, or Carlos Cooks, or Malcolm, Geronimo, you know, Michael Tabor. I'm gonna listen to you? This is dumb. This is xenophobic. This is separating us. This doesn't make sense at all. And so it didn't seem like they tried to put some stuff together, like Dr. Anderson just said, which doesn't make sense, that they're trying to take our reparations. Like when they were talking about the people from Haiti coming over here, they got all these there's so many doctors, Black doctors in Florida are Haitians, and they're taking our doctors' positions. I'm like, really? All the struggles our people are going through in Haiti right now, the country that was that first democracy on this Western Hemisphere, who fought these European colonizers from France, the U.S., Spain, I mean, it wasn't just France. You know, after all they went through, yeah, they owe reparations by all of Europe. So no, we should be embracing our brothers and sisters and Haiti so close to us and going through hell like they're going through right now. And y'all over there dissing them because because we're 1 week or 2 weeks away from the poorhouse. They got 3 months before they can be in the poorhouse. And so we're gonna diss them? Come on.
Yeah, so now I noticed that ADOS and FBA, they spend a lot of time attacking other black people. You know, when the slave patrol pull up on them, when their real enemy shows up, they don't have that same fervor and that same attitude for their real enemy. Years ago, the great Omawali Malcolm X said that the 1/10 is our enemy. He said, many of us don't think so, but time will tell. I think history tells us that the 1/10 is our enemy. So the operative word there is enemy. The great Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, in her book, The ISIS Papers, she said racism is war on black people. So you got two ideas. You got enemy and war. And I say if we don't understand our situation in a system which is based on the myth of white supremacy, within the context of warfare, then we will never be able to transform the condition of the group. The great Neely Fuller Jr. said in his book, The Code, he said, our goal as the number one victims of systemic white supremacy should be to eliminate that system and replace it with a system of justice. If I could circle back to the great Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she said, if you're not doing your part to fight the system of structural racism, which is based on the myth of white supremacy, you're basically just trying to find a more comfortable seat in it. Now, as long as we're arguing, debating, and bickering with each other, we're taking our eyes off of our real enemy. And who benefits from that, right? So if you're attacking me and trying to debate me, then you don't understand how the system of white supremacy works. Brother Agyei, what are your thoughts on this idea that a lot of these black separatist groups spend more time trying to argue and attack other black people than they spend on their real enemy?
Yeah, well, once again, it's a neo-colonial leader. People often, and let me just to give this nuance, there's no one answer. Some of these people are working with our enemies and our plants and are put in our communities deliberately to cause division and confusion and chaos, right? For some of the reasons we all talked about earlier. Some of these people are well-intentioned and woefully ignorant and woefully politically illiterate and haven't read, as Brother Kwabena kind of broke down, some of the classic foundational literature, right? And one of the things that I think we should really look at is when you go for a job, they want an interview, they want a resume, they want references. They ain't just gonna go by what you say. We want to know, who did you work with in the past? What do they say? What is your work record? Were you late all the time? Were you taking breaks all the time? Or were you conscientious as a worker, right? One of the things we have to do, we should expect the enemy is going to send plants, is going to take people who are well-intentioned and pay to buy them off and co-opt them. We have to make sure that we vet people. We have to make sure. So, for instance, for me, I'm hard to impress. I'm not easily impressed by people who talk well. I'm not easily impressed. Yeah, I don't care if you wrote 100 books. I don't care if you wrote 10 movies. I want to know that you fight. Do you have a record where you fought for our people? If you ain't fight for our people, by definition, I do not trust that you're going to fight for us now. And fighting can occur intellectually, culturally, but you have to have in your history taken position for our people and against our enemies. Being fearless and exposing those who are mischievous, right? Being fearless, taking hardcore positions. I don't want to hear the cop who tells me he worked for 50 years as a police officer, and now he's telling me all the bad things that happen in the police department to black people. I want to see that you quit,
right?
That you resign. See, this is what we got to get. People will talk a good game. Listen, family, if you ain't fight for us, then I'm like, man, you just another Negro. Unless you've distinguished yourself in battle. You can't join a gang by saying you tough. They're going to jump you in. They're going to bat you and chain you, punch you in your ribs. You're going to go through that gauntlet line, like a soul train line. They want to see, are you going to take that? You're going to fight back? Are you going to run? What you going to do? It's the only way they know what you're going to do in a real situation. And we have to get to a point, not saying we're jumping on people in, family, but we got to get to a point where we provide structures to test and try the people that go before our people. I mean, there's no other way around that.
Look, and not saying it's like a Soul Train line either.
Right.
No.
That's right.
Yeah, right
Not
on.
even. I know it is an Apache line, but different people got different names for the same thing. But
That's
either
right.
way, a lot of people that identify as FBA, they try to distance themselves from Africa by saying the Africans don't like us. However, so-called FBAs kill each other in the street every day in America. So evidently, the so-called FBAs don't like each other. Brother Kwabena, how do you respond to that when you hear them say, well, the Africans don't like us, so we have to justify distancing ourselves from them?
Man, I heard so much of that. My first trip to Africa, I was like just overwhelmed. So I remember I went with African American Summit back in '97, I think it was. But we went to Zania, South Africa. Then we went over to Zimbabwe. And I remember jumping out the car, off the bus, taking us from the airport to where we were staying. And everybody was getting on the bus. And I got on the, I hopped in with the cats that was taking all our luggage and stuff and just rolled with them. I just was so gung ho. And I was interviewing, asking them about that. I said, the word is we always hear that y'all don't like us and how y'all feel about Africans from the U.S. And they were like, oh man, we love y'all. We want y'all to come home. We want to come visit. And I got the same thing on all my trips back home to the mama land. Do I have some people who trip and don't want me there or act like that sometime or call me or Bruni or whatever when I was in Ghana? Yeah, you have some of that. Same thing I got, like I grew up in L.A. I lived in one neighborhood in the same city. If I go to another neighborhood, they don't want me there.
Right.
So I look at that as just, the differences. Because even today when I struggle with the DOS madness, people will say, well, we're different. People are different. We're different than them. Bro, I grew up in L.A. I moved to Louisiana to go to school. Them brothers and sisters in Louisiana was crazy as I don't know what. It all said all kind of crazy words, and they were making groceries, and and just the language it's different. But we the same people. When I came up here to the Chicago area, we crazy up here too. I'm sorry, quote unquote. But we different cultures, different areas. But we all shouldn't say different cultures. We're all the same culture, but there's some differences. But we all the same people. And this whole thing about America. I think about Dr. King in the statement when he talked about the wars in America being so ignorant, so arrogant. The whole word about America. Sometimes I get up to FBAs and say, okay, if y'all FBA talking about fundamental Black Americans, why you dissing our brothers and sisters that's coming from Central America and the American Isles of the Caribbean? All that's America. Canada's in America. Mexico's in America. That's arrogant. This is the United States. So I struggle with that term. That's an arrogant term for everybody in this country that uses that term, America, whether they know it or not. That's arrogance.
Yeah. And I say America was named after Amerigo Vespucci, who was an Italian explorer. Why would you want to relate to and identify with that? But either way, I noticed that there are any number of other groups. So, for example, you have Jewish people, you have Hasidic Jews, Orthodox Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, and they don't all agree with each other. But you don't see them on the internet cursing each other out. You have Chinese people. Some Chinese people are Christian. Some Chinese people are Buddhist. Some Chinese people are Taoists. You don't see Chinese people arguing over their differences and cursing each other out on the internet. You have in America, East Indian people. Some East Indian people are Christians. Some are Muslims. Some are Hindus. Some speak Urdu. Some speak Hindi. Some speak Sanskrit or any number of other languages. But you will never see them on the internet cursing each other out, although they do have differences. Brother Agyei, why do you think it's so easy for Black people to just get on the internet and try to curse each other out in front of the world? Why is that so easy for us?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, and I think what all of us have said in different ways in this broadcast is that if you're a tiny minority of the planet, which white folk are, and you're trying to subjugate the majority of the planet, which we are, how do you do that? Well, certainly you're going to use guns and artillery. Certainly you're going to miseducate and make sure they deliberately can't read and write, can't compute, can't think and solve problems. But you certainly want to create division, and you want to teach them they are nothing, have nothing, and can be nothing. Because then, as Carter G. Woodson famously wrote, they will not only go out the back door, they will cut a back door to go out of themselves, right? So we're talking now about psychological warfare. It's funny because in the last few days, everybody's talking about, oh, United States bombed Iran. And Iran today bombed Israel. And I'm like, yeah, that's one type of bomb, but there's another type of warfare that we're missing, and that's psychological warfare. And that's so when you see colorism in our community, dark skin got a problem with the lighter skin and vice versa. You see gender wars in our community, black men that's blaming black women for every problem in the community, or black women who think all men are dogs, right? When you see pretentious, shadiddy, classy black people who think that they're somehow intrinsically better than working class black people, or black people who made a few mistakes in their life and got caught up in the prison system. What you are seeing are the expressions and the manifestations of people who have been conditioned to hate themselves, self-loathing. So yeah, people who hate themselves hate the reflection of themselves in the mirror and in their community. And this is why we have such a hard time listening to black authority. You know, we all talk about Malcolm and Garvey and all these people now, but the elders I know who knew some of those people when they were alive say a lot of our people had beef with those people while they were living, because we got a problem. We can hear it from the white man. It's amazing what we believe in white folks. When a brother or sister come and say it, they think they know. They think they better. See, that's that conditioning.
Yeah.
That's so to me, it all goes back to that.
Okay. Now, I'm noticing that a lot of these black separatist groups are being led by fake experts on the internet that have no credibility whatsoever. And some of them say, well, you know, there's no leadership and we don't need leadership. And I say, again, looking at our situation within the context of warfare, an army going into battle with no leadership is going to get cooked by the army that's going into battle with leadership. And so I don't really believe that FBA and all these people are committed to a realistic agenda that's going to transform the condition of black people. And I know that we can do better together. I don't do a black division of any sort. So we must be against black division. In the time that we have left, Brother Kwabena, I guess I'll come to you first. Tell us how people can get more information on Clear the Airways and some of the activism that you're engaged in around some of the boycotts and stuff. How can people follow up and get more information?
ClearTheAirwaysProject.org, and it's WAVES. Also, we have a presence on Facebook. Check out what your children are listening to. This whole attack has been going on for so long right now. It's really, and they haven't let up. You know, we give them a homeboy, Kendrick Lamar is like the biggest thing in hip hop right now, selling out big almost filling up big stadiums and what have you. But you know, his latest hit song came from an album called "We Still Don't Trust You." We don't trust you, and that's come from a statement: "If Young Metro don't trust you, I'm gonna shoot you." And who's behind him? Who's behind all that? So we really need to look deep into what's going on, and just simply look at the lyrics. I do want to say this real quick about FBA and the ADOS stuff. I always trip out because I go at it with them, bro. I usually don't go at it with too many people, but I go at it with them. Because again, they're separating us. But when they like bring up Malcolm or anybody who's a Pan-Africanist, I'm like, man, y'all need to keep them out your mouth, Garvey, because y'all would diss them. Right. You know, your philosophy says that leave us alone, stay away from us. But if you look at what's happening with Ibrahim Traoré and what's happening in the Sahel and all the beautiful things that are happening in Africa right now in terms of Pan-Africanism and getting the European out of control in our resources, I see a lot of these FBA people, these people like giving that love. I'm like, come on, y'all. So they may be coming around.
Yeah, so now I would add on to that by saying when those people who are against black nationalism and Pan-Africanism, when they quote Malcolm X or whomever, again, Brother Agyei, we deal in logical fallacies. That's called cherry picking. They want to cherry pick something Malcolm said and then try to use it against you as if Malcolm X didn't come out and say, I'm a black nationalist freedom fighter. Yes. Right. Now, Brother Agyei, you have several books, Truth for Our Youth. You have one on leadership. You have Wukusu, which is the latest book. You created Harlem Liberation School. How can people find you online and get more information about the work that you're doing?
Thank you for that, brother. Certainly, just type in Harlem Liberation School. You'll come right to it, family. That's the easiest way on the internet. Just type it up in Google. You'll come right to it. Can I say something quickly about FBA?
Of course.
Okay. One of the problems I have with them, and it's not them, it's what they're doing. Really, I don't know any of them personally, but they are radical integrationists. Family. They're not really pushed. They're very selfish and parochial, and their whole game is they want to get reparations. Well, very good, but before you, there was Cobra talking that talk, and there was Republic of New Africa talking that talk, and there was Nation of Islam talking that talk. So you ain't invent that; you just inherited it. The difference is those other organizations were fighting for Black people around the planet. So we got to make sure that we don't let people use this nationalist talk and Pan-African rhetoric, but they're really nothing but radical integrationists. They want to prove to the white man that we's good, massa. And look all the work we did, massa. Look at how we built the terrain and we chopped the wood and bought the cotton, massa. Give us our money, massa. See, nationalists and Pan-Africanists may ask for reparations, but it's from a whole different vantage point. And secondly, we ain't begging for nothing. That's what you owe us.
Yes,
right? First of all. Secondly, we're looking at Pan-Africanists are not selfish or parochial. We're saying that we know that people in North America, South America, the continent of Africa, all throughout the diaspora are suffering from the same man, from this, in many cases, the same issues. Right, and so we do ourselves just logically a disservice by segmenting ourselves. That's their game. Their game is division. Our game has to be that we form confederations, we form leagues, we team up, and that's what Pan-Africanists do. And that's why I think it's the most viable when you particularly combine it with nationalism. Pan-African nationalism is probably one of the most viable ideologies, liberation ideologies, for Black people. It gives us a fighting chance. Because you out here talking about I'm Haitian, I'm Jamaican, I'm Cuban. Oh, good luck with that one, family. Good luck with that. You'll completely get obliterated one by one.
Sure.
And you'll be used against each other. So and I just want to say this. I like to leave people with references. There's an article. Let me bring it up. There's an article written by Mark P. Fancher that everybody should read. It's called The Folly of So-Called Foundational Black Americans, from Black Agenda Report. The Folly of So-Called Foundational Black Americans. And he completely knocks it out the park. He completely will help you understand why their whole politic is ridiculous and reactionary. It's anything but revolutionary.
I gotta check that out. Mark's a bad brother. I know Mark. I gotta check that out. I hadn't seen that yet, man. Right on.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I haven't seen it yet either. But I would say in closing that to me it's illogical to divide the group in the name of begging the oppressor for crumbs. And then it seems to me like it's fake AstroTurf movement because they never talk about when they get the reparations that they're going to start schools and shopping centers and build housing and grow their own food. The argument just divides us. And I think that's the whole key. And I would say, as it relates to Black unity, Brother Agyei, if I could add on to what you said, in the animal kingdom, even animals understand this idea of unity. So, for example, lions travel in a pride, right? If a little baby cub lion is kind of straying off from the group, the hyenas are in the tall grass laying for him. The moment that little baby cub lion gets too far away from the group, the hyenas are going to jump on him and they're going to tear him up. So individuality is a prerequisite to vulnerability. And dividing the group does nothing else but make us weak. But on that note, I want to thank you both for joining the FACT Project today and chiming in with all of the insight. I want to thank everybody that got in on the chat. I was unable to participate in the chat today, but a lot going on in the chat. Some people are agreeing, saying that, yes, FBA is an internet hoax. And so, again, I want to thank you both. And I would tell everybody watching this, check out cleartheairwaysproject.org. Is it or .org or .com?
.org.
Okay, so cleartheairwaysproject.org. And I would say definitely go to YouTube and check out Harlem Liberation School. Like and subscribe to videos. They just did one recently with Mama Ya Baruti. Shout out to the Baruti. So, you know, when I mention names like that, if you know who they are, you know that Harlem Liberation School is bringing the heat. So again, I want to thank both of you brothers, man, and we'll talk again soon.
Peace.
All right, brothers. All right, peace.